The first thing you have to understand about an avoidance regret is that it usually doesn't show up the moment they hurt you. In the moment, their nervous system goes into protection mode. They deactivate. They shut down, get quiet, go logical, or disappear, not because you didn't matter, but because you mattered enough to trigger fear. Your emotions, your tears, even your calm, "This hurt me," can feel like a spotlight on their failure. And to an avoidant, feeling like a failure doesn't feel like a simple mistake. It feels like danger, exposure, and loss of control. So at first, they don't grieve. They regulate. They create space to get their body back under control. They tell themselves stories that soothe the panic. "It wasn't that serious." They're overreacting. "I needed space. This is for the best." These aren't always meant to be cruel. They're meant to protect the ego from shame. If they can label you too emotional, they don't have to face the deeper truth your emotions were a normal response to inconsistency, silence, and being left alone inside the relationship. But you can't outthink a bond. You can't rationalize away attachment. You can mute feelings, but the body keeps receipts. That's why regret often begins in tiny moments that catch them off guard. A quiet night when the phone stays silent. A familiar song in the car. A place you used to go to. A stressful day where they instinctively reach for comfort, then remember you're not there. Suddenly, the distance they demanded starts feeling like emptiness. The space they claimed they needed starts feeling like a void. This is when their mind starts replaying what it tried to minimize. Not the dramatic scenes, the small ones. Your voice when you tried to explain yourself. The way you softened your tone to keep things from escalating. The patience you offered even while you were hurting. The times you asked for clarity and got silence. And what makes this replay so painful is the realization that you weren't asking for perfection, you were asking for care. You weren't demanding a performance, you were asking to be met, to be reassured, to be handled gently when you were vulnerable. Regret starts the moment they connect impact to behavior. When they finally see that "I need space" wasn't neutral, it had consequences. Their silence didn't calm anything, it abandoned you inside your pain. Their cold logic didn't solve the issue, it dismissed your humanity. Their disappearing didn't protect love, it trained your nervous system to stop trusting them. And that's where regret becomes heavy, because it's no longer just missing you, it's recognizing they helped create the conditions that made you stop feeling safe. Then comes the most confusing part, longing mixed with shame. Longing pulls them toward you. Shame pushes them away. Shame says, "If you go back, you'll have to face what you did." Shame says, "If you apologize, you'll be vulnerable." Shame says, "If you listen to their feelings, you'll drown." So even when they miss you, they may hover instead of repair. They watch your stories. They like a post. They send a casual, "Hope you're okay," that carries zero ownership, because ownership would require them to sit in your feelings without running. This is where regret can look like mixed signals. They act interested, then disappear. They open a door, then close it. They reach out, then go silent when you respond with real emotion. They want relief from consequences, but they fear the conversation that would create real repair. And if you've been the one who always explained, always forgave, always carried the emotional weight, you might feel tempted to take the breadcrumb and turn it into a reunion. But a breadcrumb is not a bridge, and hope without change becomes another wound. So watch for evidence, not words. Evidence looks like them staying present when you name what hurt. Evidence looks like them validating your feelings without arguing you out of them. Evidence looks like them taking ownership without flipping blame onto your reactions. Evidence looks like consistency after they've gotten the comfort they wanted, not just intensity when they fear losing access. Because an avoidant can regret the loss of your warmth and still avoid the work required to keep it. Their regret becomes real the moment it turns into responsibility, when they stop trying to feel better and start trying to do better, even when it costs their pride. When the avoidant reaches the second phase of regret, it's no longer about shock or confusion, it's about awareness. The realization hits them that their silence, their detachment, their cold logic didn't protect the relationship, it dismantled it. But they don't know how to express that truth without feeling exposed. Regret becomes the emotion they hide behind pride, and pride becomes the armor they wear to avoid feeling the full weight of their guilt. This phase is silent agony. They want to fix it, but they don't trust themselves to face the consequences of what they did, so they stay quiet and overthink every possible way of reaching out. Their mind becomes a loop. What if they hate me? What if they've moved on? What if they don't even want to hear from me anymore? But underneath those questions lies the deeper one. What if I ruined something that would have lasted? Avoidants live their entire emotional life trying to avoid that kind of vulnerability, but when regret surfaces, it pierces straight through the walls they've built. They don't just miss you, they begin to see what you were really trying to do, how you weren't attacking them. You were trying to connect. They remember your tone when you spoke about your feelings. They remember the patience you gave them, the soft way you tried to reach them even when they pushed you away. And that memory hurts more than any argument, because it reveals what they couldn't see then. You weren't trying to control them, you were trying to love them. This is when the "if only" thoughts start to haunt them. If only I had listened. If only I had opened up. If only I had stayed when it got uncomfortable. They start romanticizing the ordinary moments, the ones they used to take for granted. The texts they ignored, the plans they canceled, the affection they downplayed. The emptiness that follows isn't just loneliness, it's the realization that someone once saw them, really saw them, and they couldn't handle it. Now, that mirror of unconditional care is gone, and they're left with the one reflection they've avoided their entire life themselves. For an avoidant, emotional responsibility feels like suffocation. They've spent years learning to equate closeness with losing control. But in this stage, they start to see how backwards that is. The control they fought to keep cost them the one thing that made them feel alive. They wanted safety, but what they created was isolation. They wanted peace, but what they have now is silence that feels like punishment. This awareness doesn't heal them, it cracks them open. It destabilizes the story they've been telling themselves to survive. For the first time, they understand that the walls that kept them safe are the same ones that keep them alone. Some try to numb the regret. They dive into distractions, pretending it's over, that they've accepted it. They might tell themselves, "It just wasn't meant to be," or "They'll find someone better." These lines aren't wisdom. They're self-soothing for people who can't yet tolerate accountability. But it never fully works. Because when you've had real emotional connection, your nervous system remembers it. The body knows when something meaningful is gone, even if the mind denies it. So they carry the ache with them, quietly, sometimes for months or even years. Others try to reach out in half steps. A short text, a random comment, a breadcrumb of attention. Not because they're trying to manipulate you, but because that's the only way they know how to handle regret. Test, retreat, repeat. They're terrified that if they come back fully, they'll have to feel everything they avoided. Your disappointment, their shame, the conversation about how deeply their silence affected you. To them, that confrontation feels like emotional death. But deep down, they also know that if they don't face it, they'll never escape the cycle. So they stay suspended between two fears, the fear of losing you completely and the fear of feeling their own guilt. It's a kind of emotional purgatory, neither moving forward nor healing. This is where they start realizing that avoidance doesn't erase pain, it multiplies it. Every day they stay silent adds another layer of distance, another layer of regret. And the longer they stay away, the more they begin to understand the truth. They didn't just lose a relationship, they lost the version of themselves that felt safe being loved. The irony is that what they feared all along, vulnerability, is the only thing that could have saved them. But they're not ready to admit that yet. They're still wrestling with the illusion of control, still hoping that somehow the feelings will fade, still clinging to the pride that says, it's too late. But regret doesn't fade for an avoidant, it lingers, quietly, until the day they realize that the person they were protecting themselves from wasn't you. It was the part of themselves that didn't believe they were worthy of being loved right. In the third phase of an avoidance regret, the emotion stops being quiet and starts turning into an urge. An urge to reach out, to fix it, to reconnect, to stop the bleeding of time. But because they don't know how to repair in a clean, emotionally mature way, that urge comes out sideways. This is the phase where regret becomes mixed signals, where longing becomes breadcrumbs, where missing you becomes testing you. Not because they don't care, but because caring now feels risky. If they come back fully, they risk being confronted with the pain they caused. If they stay away, they risk losing you forever. So they choose the safest middle ground, hover without owning. Their mind starts building scenarios. Maybe I'll text them. Maybe I'll call. Maybe I'll just say I was thinking about them. Then the fear hits. What if they ignore me? What if they're cold? What if they ask why I did what I did? What if they cry? What if I don't know what to say? That last fear is the real one. Avoidants aren't only afraid of your emotions, they're afraid of their inability to handle emotions without shutting down. They fear getting flooded, saying the wrong thing, failing again, and proving they're not capable of real intimacy. So they reach for control. This is where the safe message appears, a neutral check-in, a meme, a random question, something that opens a door without admitting why they want it open. Hey, how have you been? Feels safer then. I'm sorry for how I handled your feelings. Because apology is exposure. Apology is responsibility. Apology admits impact, and impact brings shame. So they choose the path that lets them feel close without standing in the full spotlight. If you respond warmly, their nervous system gets immediate relief. It's like oxygen. They feel, I'm not fully lost. They feel, I still matter. But then something happens that confuses you. They may pull back again. Because relief can quickly turn into pressure. The moment they sense closeness returning, they also sense expectation returning. They fear the conversation that will follow, the one you deserve to have. They fear being asked to be consistent. They fear being asked to show up. So they stabilize themselves by creating distance again. That's why this phase can feel like emotional whiplash for you. Warm contact, then silence, then another warm contact, then silence again. This phase also includes subtle jealousy and comparison. If they see you moving forward, calm, glowing, rebuilding your life, it triggers something sharp. Not always because they want to control you, but because your healing confirms their worst fear, they are no longer needed. Avoidants often confuse being needed with being loved, because being needed gives them leverage. Your independence removes leverage. And when leverage disappears, regret becomes urgent. They may suddenly become more attentive, more curious, more emotionally expressive because they feel the window closing. But this is where you have to be very careful. Their urgency can look like transformation, but urgency is not change. Urgency is often panic. It's the nervous system trying to regain safety. Real change is slow. Real change is consistent. Real change shows up even when the fear calms down. The avoidant who is truly growing doesn't just reappear when they feel lonely or threatened. They stay present when it's uncomfortable. They take responsibility even when it risks rejection. They choose humility over pride. In this phase, you may finally hear words like, I didn't mean it. I was going through a lot. I care about you. I miss you. These words can be real, but watch how they respond when you name your feelings. If you say, you hurt me, do they listen, or do they get defensive? If you ask for clarity, do they provide it, or do they turn vague? If you ask what they want, do they answer directly, or do they keep you in uncertainty? Because the true test of regret is not whether they feel it. It's whether they can hold the consequences of it without running. This phase is where their regret either matures into repair or collapses into another cycle. If they keep hovering, they are trying to soothe themselves, not rebuild trust. They want comfort from your presence, but not accountability for your pain. And if you allow that, you become their emotional reset button. Every time they feel guilt, they press you for relief. Every time they feel lonely, they pull you back. And then when intimacy rises again, they retreat, leaving you with the same wound reopened. So the third phase of regret is simple to read if you look at the pattern. Are they coming with ownership, or are they coming with access? Ownership says, I'm sorry for how I handled your feelings, I want to repair this, and I'm willing to show up differently. Access says, I miss you, but disappears the moment you ask for consistency. The difference will protect your heart. In the fourth phase of an avoidance regret, the situation stops being about missing you and starts being about facing you. This is the moment where their inner feelings finally collide with real-world consequences, because now they can't hide behind nostalgia or small check-ins or I was just thinking about you. Now the truth is standing in the doorway, and the truth has a voice, your feelings, your pain, your memory of what it was like to be handled carelessly. This is where you'll notice something powerful. An avoidant can say they regret it, but the real test is whether they can sit inside your reality without trying to escape it. Because regret is easy in private. Regret is easy at midnight when loneliness hits. Regret is easy when they're scrolling and your absence stings. But regret becomes real when you finally speak plainly. You hurt me. I felt dismissed. I felt abandoned. I didn't feel safe. And in that moment, the avoidance nervous system does what it has always done. It searches for an exit. Their body reads your emotions like a threat, not because you're wrong to have them, but because your emotions feel like exposure. Exposure feels like shame. Shame feels like danger, so they may try to control the moment instead of holding it. They may get defensive. That's not what I meant. You're twisting it. You're too sensitive. They may minimize. It wasn't that serious. You're making a big deal. They may intellectualize, turning your feelings into a debate instead of a wound that needs care. Or they may shut down completely. Disappear, go quiet, take space, and call it peace, even though what they're really doing is running from accountability. This is the phase where many people get trapped, because the avoidant will often offer emotion without repair. They might say, I feel terrible. I hate that I hurt you. I miss you. But the moment you ask for clarity or consistency, they retreat. And what that reveals is painful. They want relief from their guilt more than they want responsibility for your pain. They want to feel like a good person again, but they don't want to do the uncomfortable work of becoming a safer partner. They want the closeness, but they fear the consequences of closeness. So this phase becomes a fork in the road. Either their regret matures into ownership, or it collapses into another cycle of avoidance. Ownership sounds like this. I see how I handled your feelings. I understand why you stopped trusting me. I'm not here to argue with your experience. I want to repair this, and I'm willing to show up consistently. Notice the difference. There's no excuse, no blame, no attempt to make your feelings smaller so they can feel bigger. Ownership doesn't ask you to stop feeling. Ownership makes room for your feelings, even when it's uncomfortable. Avoidance sounds like this. I'm sorry you feel that way. I didn't do it on purpose. I was stressed. I was going through a lot. You know how I am. Those lines can be true in pieces, but when they are used as shields, they become a way to avoid accountability. It turns your pain into an inconvenience they want to manage, instead of a reality they want to honor. And when your pain becomes something they manage, you become the one shrinking again, softening again, swallowing again, just to keep them close. In this phase, your nervous system is also being tested, because the avoidance regret can trigger hope in you, and hope can make you lower standards. You might think, at least they're trying. But trying is not the same as changing. If their regret is real, they won't only show emotion, they'll show effort. They will have the hard conversation without punishing you for bringing it up. They will answer direct questions without getting vague. They will tolerate the discomfort of your honesty without turning it into an argument about your tone. They will validate your feelings without treating them like an accusation. You'll also notice their relationship with time changes. A regretful avoidant who isn't ready will try to delay everything. Let's not talk about it now. Can we just move forward? Why are we bringing up the past? Because the past requires accountability, and accountability requires vulnerability. But a regretful avoidant who is growing will do the opposite. They will lean into repair before time hardens the distance. They will understand that trust doesn't rebuild by ignoring wounds. It rebuilds by tending to them. This is why your response matters so much here. Not because you should control the outcome, but because you should protect your sanity. You don't have to punish them. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to explode to be taken seriously. Calm clarity is stronger than emotional pleading. Calm clarity says, I'm open to repair, but I won't re-enter confusion. If we talk honestly. If we rebuild consistently. That stance doesn't demand anything. It simply defines what is required for your heart to stay open. And when you hold that line, you create the moment of truth. Their regret either becomes a doorway into real accountability, or it reveals itself as a temporary emotion that disappears the moment it's asked to carry responsibility. In the fifth phase of an avoidance regret, the regret stops being an emotion and becomes a reckoning. This is the stage where they can no longer comfort themselves with good intentions, because the impact is undeniable now. They begin to realize something that shakes them. You didn't pull away because you wanted to punish them. You pulled away because your nervous system couldn't survive being handled that way anymore. You stopped trying not because you stopped loving, but because you stopped feeling safe. And when an avoidant finally understands that, the regret becomes heavy, because it's not about losing you in theory, it's about losing access to the version of you that used to stay. This phase often begins when they notice a permanent shift in you. Your replies are calmer, shorter, less emotionally available. Your energy is different. You're not begging for clarity. You're not chasing. You're not arguing. You're not performing love to keep them close. You're simply gone, even if you're still polite. And that quiet, gone, can hit an avoidant harder than 1,000 angry messages, because anger still implies attachment. Calm detachment implies a door closing. Now the avoidant starts replaying your feelings with new eyes. They remember the times you said, "This hurts," and they minimized it. They remember the times you asked, "Can we talk?" and they delayed it. They remember the times you needed reassurance, and they gave you logic instead of comfort. And suddenly they can see it. Your feelings weren't random storms, they were signals. They were alarms. They were your nervous system telling you the relationship was not safe. The avoidant may have interpreted your feelings as pressure, but now they understand your feelings were evidence of love trying to survive their distance. Here comes the hardest part: shame, real shame. Not the kind that makes someone post a sad quote online, but the kind that sits in the chest and makes it hard to breathe. Shame says, "I was careless with something precious." Shame says, "I made them feel alone." Shame says, "I taught them not to trust me." And avoidants don't know what to do with shame. Shame is why they avoid emotional conversations in the first place. They fear being seen as the bad one, the failing one, the one who can't love correctly. So this phase is where they either mature or retreat even deeper. If they retreat, they will try to erase the shame by rewriting the story again. They may blame you, label you, too emotional, say you're holding on to the past, or act like the relationship wasn't that serious. They'll try to make your pain smaller so their guilt can feel smaller. But it won't work because the evidence is in your absence. They can argue with words, but they cannot argue with the shift in your energy. They can't argue with the fact that you finally stopped chasing. If they mature, something different happens. They stop trying to win the narrative and start trying to win your trust back. They understand that regret without repair is selfish because it only serves their need to feel better. So they begin to accept that repair must cost them something: pride, comfort, control. They have to sit in uncomfortable conversations. They have to hear how their silence affected you without turning it into an argument. They have to validate feelings they once minimized. They have to hold your pain without fleeing. This is where you'll see the difference between regret and real growth. Regret says, growth says, "I will do better." Regret says, "I miss you." Growth says, "I will show up consistently." Regret says, "I didn't mean it." Growth says, "I understand the impact, and I'm taking responsibility." Because intention doesn't rebuild trust. Consistency rebuilds trust. Time plus behavior rebuilds trust. In this phase, they may finally attempt a clean apology, but a clean apology is not long, dramatic, or full of excuses. A clean apology is simple, specific, and accountable. "I handled your feelings badly. I shut down when you needed me. I can see how that hurt you. I'm sorry and I want to repair it." No but. No blame. No minimization. No pressure for you to forgive quickly. Because real regret respects the time it takes to rebuild safety. And here is the key point for you: this phase will test your standards. Because when an avoidant finally expresses regret, it can feel like the closure you've been starving for. It can tempt you to open the door fully again. But your heart must stay wise. You can accept an apology without re-entering a pattern. You can hear regret without sacrificing boundaries. You can say, "Thank you for acknowledging it. If we reconnect, it has to be consistent and safe. I won't do hot and cold again." That sentence protects you and reveals them. If their regret is real, they will respect the boundary and lean into the work. If their regret is only an emotion, they will disappear the moment the work begins. Because the truth is, an avoidant can regret losing you and still not be ready to keep you. And you are not here to be someone's lesson. You're here to be someone's choice, someone's steady home, someone's safe love, not their late realization after you've already had to heal alone. In the sixth phase of an avoidance regret, everything gets simple, but not easy. The fog clears, the excuses lose power, the emotional games stop working, and what's left is one brutal truth: either they grow or they repeat. This is the phase where regret becomes a decision. Not a feeling, not a late night sadness, not a wave of nostalgia, but a choice to face what they avoided their whole life: emotional responsibility. Because at this point, they finally understand something. They didn't lose you because love wasn't there. They lost you because safety wasn't. This is the stage where the avoidance nervous system starts realizing that staying away did not keep them protected. It kept them alone. They begin to see the full cost of their coping style. Every time they withdrew, it trained you to stop reaching. Every time they minimized your feelings, it taught you to distrust your own emotions. Every time they went cold, it forced you to become strong in ways you shouldn't have needed to. And now you are strong. You are quieter. You are clearer. You are less available for confusion, and your new calm is what finally teaches them what their old control could never teach them. Actions have consequences, and love cannot survive without repair. In this phase, the avoidant often experiences a deep internal humility, even if they don't show it dramatically. Humility is not humiliation. Humility is the moment they stop defending themselves and start seeing you. They stop saying, "I didn't mean it," and start saying, "I understand how it felt." They stop saying, "You're too sensitive," and start saying, "I see why you shut down." They stop trying to win the argument and start trying to rebuild trust, because they finally understand that regret without changed behavior is just another form of self-protection. It's regret that asks for comfort without offering safety. This is the phase where you can measure whether their regret is real. A real avoidant transformation shows up in consistency when it's not convenient. Not just one apology, but repeated repair. Not just one warm week, but months of steady presence. They begin to communicate before disappearing. They begin to name their triggers instead of acting them out. They begin to sit in discomfort instead of running from it. They begin to ask questions about your inner world, not to control it, but to understand it. They learn to tolerate the fact that your feelings exist and still stay present. That's the core skill they lacked: emotional tolerance. But here's what makes phase 6 powerful. It's also where many avoidants fail. Because when they try to return, your boundaries are stronger now. You don't rush back. You don't melt at their warmth. You don't hand them instant intimacy. You require proof. And proof feels slow. Proof feels uncomfortable. Proof feels like pressure to someone who still wants control. So some avoidants will collapse here. They will interpret your standards as rejection. They will say you're cold, unforgiving, holding a grudge. But what they're really experiencing is the loss of easy access. They're experiencing what it feels like when they can't reset the relationship with one emotional moment. And if they can't tolerate that, they're not ready. A ready avoidant doesn't punish you for having boundaries. They respect them. They understand that trust was damaged, and trust rebuilds slowly. They don't demand forgiveness. They earn it. They don't ask you to forget the past. They help you feel safe in the present. They don't say, "Can we just move on?" Because moving on without repair is how the wound stays alive. They say, "Tell me what you need now, and I'll show you through actions." That's the difference. Phase 6 is also where the avoidant has to stop confusing guilt with love. Guilt is painful, but it's selfish if it only leads to withdrawal. Love is responsible. Love stays present. Love repairs. Love doesn't hide behind fear. And if they finally learn that, they begin to build a new identity, not the identity of someone who disappears, but someone who can hold closeness without panicking. Someone who can hear hard truths without shutting down. Someone who can be consistent even when their nervous system wants to flee. This is not a personality change, it's a nervous system retraining, and it takes effort, humility, and time. And on your side, phase 6 is where you stop confusing their regret with your destiny. You can acknowledge their apology without reopening old cycles. You can allow the truth to be spoken without handing your heart back instantly. You can stay compassionate while staying firm. You can say, "I appreciate you owning it. If we rebuild, It will be slowly, with consistency, and with real repair. That is not punishment. That is self-respect. Because the final phase of regret is not about whether they miss you. It's about whether they can finally do what you needed all along: show up when it's uncomfortable. Stay when it's vulnerable. Speak when it's easier to hide. Choose repair over ego. Choose consistency over control. Choose love, not as a feeling, but as a pattern. And if they can't, then the regret will remain what it has always been for many avoidants. A painful lesson they feel too late, after the person who loved them has already had to become whole without them.